The stars outside the window looked calm, but inside the ship, alarms were screaming. Commander Jacob Vance held onto the control panel as the survey vessel shook violently. Lights flickered above him. The ship had been hit by a sudden magnetic storm. It came out of nowhere. Engines failing, the computer said in a calm voice that didn't match the panic in Jacob's chest. Jacob knew the ship wouldn't survive the descent. He grabbed his emergency bag and strapped himself into the crash seat. The world outside spun. The sky turned purple, then red, then black. Everything went quiet. When Jacob opened his eyes, he was lying in a small crater. Smoke rose around the wreckage. The front half of the ship was destroyed, buried under rocks and broken trees. His suit's oxygen alarm was blinking. He stood up slowly, checking for broken bones. Surprisingly, he was fine. He looked around. The planet was strange, beautiful, but quiet. Bluegrass waved in the breeze. Trees were tall and silver. Strange flying creatures floated through the sky like soft jellyfish. "This is Aurealis 4," Jacob said to himself. "Unmapped. Unknown. And now I'm stuck here." The emergency beacon was damaged. The rest of the crew hadn't made it. Was alone. Jacob spent the first 2 days gathering supplies from the wreck. He set up a camp inside a broken cargo pod. Food and water would last for a few weeks. After that, he'd have to find local sources or hope for rescue. On the third day, while exploring, Jacob noticed something odd. The ground near a rocky hill was covered in strange patterns, like someone had carved them long ago. Curious, he followed the path. It led to a large, half-buried dome. The door was sealed, but still powered. When he touched it, the metal lit up with soft blue light, scanned him, then slowly opened. Inside was warm and glowing. The air smelled like flowers and rain. The dome was alive, filled with plants growing from the walls and machines built into the floor. It didn't look like any human structure. It was alien and ancient. Jacob stepped inside carefully. "Hello?" he called out. At first, there was only silence. Then something moved. A tall figure stepped from behind a pillar. She was unlike anything he had ever seen. Her skin shimmered like pearl. Her hair floated gently, like it was underwater. Her eyes glowed softly, and when she looked at him, he felt something deep inside, like an emotion touching his heart. She didn't speak, but Jacob could feel her thoughts in his mind. Gentle, curious, careful. She was the last of her kind. Her name was Elia, at least. That's what it felt like in his thoughts. It was the only living being left from an ancient race called the Alari, who had vanished thousands of years ago. Jacob had read about them in old science reports. No one believed they still existed. Elia watched him with great interest. She didn't move closer, but she didn't seem afraid either. Jacob took a small step forward and pointed to himself. "Jacob," he said slowly. Elia tilted her head, then pointed to her chest. A gentle feeling passed into his mind. Elia. They stood in silence for a while, learning each other's presence. Jacob noticed that the plants in the dome reacted to her movements. Light followed her. The air changed when she raised her hand. This place wasn't just a shelter. It was alive like her. She guided him to a seat made of smooth stone and glowing vines. Jacob sat down, and Elia reached out her hand. He hesitated, then gently touched it. The moment they made contact, images filled his mind, memories not his own. He saw bright cities of light, towers that grew from the ground, beings like her floating through air and water, singing in harmony with nature. Then the images turned cold. Fire, silence, empty halls. A voice inside his head whispered, "I am." The last Jacob pulled his hand back. He looked at Elia with new understanding. She had been alone for a long, long time, waiting. But he did know one thing. He was no longer alone. And this planet, this mystery, was far bigger than he ever imagined. As the sun set through the crystal ceiling, casting colors across the dome, Jacob realized his mission had changed. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He had been chosen. Jacob returned to the glowing dome the next morning, unsure what to expect. Soft light inside still pulsed gently like a heartbeat. It felt peaceful, like stepping into a dream that didn't want to end. Elia stood in the same place, surrounded by soft vines and floating lights. She watched Jacob enter without moving. Her eyes sparkled, and the air around her shimmered as if reacting to her thoughts. "Hello again," Jacob said quietly, though he wasn't sure if she understood the words. But it didn't matter. She felt his meaning. She nodded slowly and motioned for him to follow her deeper into the dome. As they walked, the glowing floor lit up beneath their feet. Strange plants turned toward them like living lamps. The walls changed color as they passed, showing ancient images, tall towers, green cities, skies filled with soft-winged ships. The Ilari world had once been alive with beauty. Elia led Jacob to a round chamber. In the center was a pool of clear, glowing water. Round it, small crystal shapes floated gently, like flowers on a pond. She stepped to the edge and placed her hand above it. The pool lit up, and a picture formed in the Iran image of her people. They looked like Elia, tall, glowing, graceful. They lived in harmony with nature, building cities without destroying the land. They grew their homes like trees, their machines like flowers. They spoke through emotion and shared thoughts through light. Jacob watched in awe. Elia turned to him and shared her thoughts again, slow and gentle, like a calm wind in his mind. "We did not fight nature. We listened to it. We healed planets. We gave more than we took." Then the image changed. The sky turned dark. A shadow spread across the land like smoke. Cities fell. Forests burned. The Ilari stood together, hands joined, eyes glowing, but even they could not stop the end. Jacob felt sadness touch his chest. Elia's voice returned, softer now. A sickness came, not of the body, but of the stars. A silence that ate life. The void plague, she called it. It wasn't a disease like humans. Knew it was a kind of emptiness that broke connections, that made living things stop feeling. Even their great minds couldn't cure it. It's so the Ilari chose to sleep, entered stasis, hoping one day someone might come. Most chose to return to the planet, as becoming part of it forever. Ilia had been the only one to survive. She placed a glowing crystal in Jacob's hand. It was warm and light, like holding a small sun. Images flowed through him, memories of her family, her people, her world before the silence. Jacob sat down, overwhelmed. "You've been alone for all this time." Leah nodded slowly. He looked at the crystal again. "Why me?" he asked. "Why now?" Elia stepped forward and touched the crystal he held. It pulsed once with soft blue light. She sent a new message to his mind. "You are different. You still feel. You still connect." Jacob didn't fully understand, but something inside him believed her. She led him to a tall wall filled with living vines. With a motion of her hand, the vines pulled back, revealing a hidden room. Inside were hundreds of glowing pods, each shaped like a teardrop. "This is—" Jacob paused, unsure. Elia placed her hand on one of the pods. It lit up and showed a face, another Ilari, peaceful and asleep. "Seeds of memory," she whispered into his thoughts. "Not alive, not dead, waiting for a future." Jacob's heart pounded. These weren't bodies, they were archives of consciousness kept in stasis, like digital dreams. But they needed a living being to return, not cloning, not machines. Something natural. Elia turned to him again, more serious now. "Our kind cannot return without help. We need life. Shared life, beginning with another." Jacob's breath caught. He finally understood. She wasn't just asking for survival. She was asking for something deeper. A new people, built from both of them. It wasn't romance. It wasn't even physical yet. It was about connection, soul to soul. He looked around the chamber, then back at Elia. "You want me? To help you bring them back? By becoming part of them?" Elia nodded. But this time, she didn't send words into his thoughts. Just a feeling, hope, as they sat quietly. Surrounded by the soft light and humming energy of the ancient room, Jacob realized he had never felt anything like this before. Not fear, not pressure, just the feeling of being chosen, not because he was, special, but because he was human, and that Elia believed was enough. The days on Aurealis 4 were longer than Earth's. The sun rose slowly, filling the sky with gold and purple light. Jacob had stopped counting how many days he had been on the planet. He spent most of his time with Elia inside the glowing dome, learning more about her people and the strange living technology they had left behind. Each morning, she would greet him with a soft pulse of light or a calming feeling in his mind. She never spoke aloud, but her thoughts were clear, like gentle waves touching the shore of his mind. Jacob had started to understand her without needing words. One day, Elia took him to a new part of the dome. This room was smaller, more private. The walls glowed in soft green light, and in the center was a tree not like any tree Jacob had seen before. Its trunk was silver, and its leaves shone like glass. "This is beautiful," Jacob said, reaching out to touch a leaf. It felt warm, almost alive. Elia stood beside him. Slowly, she placed her hand on the tree's trunk. A soft hum filled the room. The branches moved slightly, and a glowing fruit began to grow. Jacob watched in silence as the fruit opened like a flower. Inside was a small crystal, bright and delicate. Elia took it carefully and placed it into Jacob's ha. And at the moment he touched it, his mind filled with light and images. He saw a child not human, not fully Alari either, but something in between. Its eyes sparkled like Elia's. Its hair was dark like his. The vision ended, and Jacob looked at her in shock. "You want a child?" he asked carefully. Elia nodded. Jacob thought back to Earth. He remembered the noise, the fast life, the way people rushed past each other without seeing. And now here he was, alone on a quiet planet, with the last of an ancient race, asking him to help bring life back. He looked at the crystal again. "How would this even work?" he asked. Elia raised her hand. A small glowing panel appeared in the air, filled with symbols and light. Slowly, the symbols turned into images Jacob could understand like a story. She showed him the process. It wasn't like human reproduction. Alari didn't need physical union in the same way. Their bodies used energy and memory combined, with living cells, to grow new life. But they needed a seed not just of DNA, but of thought and intention. A shared choice. The child would be born from both of them, part human, part Alari, but created with care inside one of the living trees in the dome. Jacob stared at the images. It was science, but it felt like art. Life made from emotion and meaning, a gift, not a task. He looked at Elia again. "Why me?" he asked quietly. Elia placed her hand over her heart, then gently reached out and touched his chest, just above his own heart. "Because you feel," her thoughts whispered. "Because you listen. Because you chose to stay." Jacob smiled a little. "It's not much of a reason." Elia tilted her head. A warm feeling filled his chest. "It is enough." They sat in silence for a while. The tree beside them glowed gently, like it was waiting too. Finally, Jacob stood up. He placed the crystal back in Elia's hands. "Don't know what kind of father I'd be," he said honestly. "But if this is really how your people come back, if this is truly what you want, then yes, I'll help." Elia's face lit up, not with joy, exactly, but with peace. A soft breeze moved through the room, though there was no wind. The dome seemed to breathe. The tree beside them pulsed once with golden light. Jacob didn't fully understand what he had agreed to, but deep down, it felt right. Not because he was saving someone, but because he was building something new. Jacob woke to the soft hum of the dome. Morning light slipped through the crystal ceiling, painting soft colors on the floor. He sat up slowly, remembering the choice he had made the night before. He had agreed to help Elia bring back her people. It was a strange thought. He wasn't just surviving on a distant world anymore. He was part of something bigger now. Something ancient, something gentle, something alive. Elia was already waiting for him near the heart tree, the silver one with glowing leaves. She stood calmly, her hands resting on the trunk. The tree pulsed with soft green light, as if it could feel the importance of the moment. Jacob stepped forward. Is it time? Elia turned, her eyes calm and bright. She nodded once, then gestured toward a smooth, round platform beside the tree. As Jacob approached it, he saw that the platform was covered in patterned spirals and curves that moved gently, as if alive. When he stepped onto the surface, it lit up under his feet. Elia joined him, holding the small crystal from before. It pulsed with quiet light, and when she placed it between them, something incredible happened. The dome responded. Light flowed down from the ceiling, wrapping around them like a slow-moving river. The air grew warmer. The patterns beneath Jacob's feet began to move faster, reacting to his thoughts, his heartbeat. Even his breath. Elia raised her hand, and the crystal floated in the air. With her other hand, she reached toward Jacob, not to touch him, but to link minds once again. Jacob closed his eyes. In his mind, he saw memories his own and hers. His childhood on Earth, his first trip to space, the moment his ship crashed. Then her memories, the songs of the Alari, the glowing cities, the loss, the silence. Their thoughts began to weave together, gently and slowly, like threads in a tapestry. The tree responded with a deep hum. Then came the final moment. The crystal pulsed one last time, then floated into the heart of the tree. The silver bark opened slightly, accepting it. The glow inside the tree grew stronger. A new fruit began to grow small at first, like a soft light wrapped in a shell. But it grew steadily, warmed by their shared thoughts. Elia turned to Jacob and gave him a feeling, not words, not images, just one strong emotion. Gratitude. The child was not yet born. It would take time to grow, like all life. But the process had begun. The Alari would live again, and humanity would be part of that future. Jacob stepped down from the platform. He felt light, not weak, but full of energy, like something inside him had opened. They walked together through the dome in silence. Later that day, Elia brought him to a part of the dome he had never seen before. This space looked more like a garden than a lab. Small trees, glowing flowers, and clear water pools filled the area. In the middle was a table made of smooth crystal, and on it rested several objects, tools, seeds, and small orbs. Elia showed him how to grow food using the Alari method. He didn't plant seeds in dirt, he placed them in soft, living moss, and guided them with intention. Jacob watched in amazement as a tiny plant began to sprout within minutes. He smiled. "You do everything with feeling, don't you?" Elia smiled back, feeling his life. For the next few days, Jacob stayed close to the tree. The growing fruit was warm and pulsing with light. Elia checked on it every morning, sometimes singing soft tones. The tree would respond with waves of light as if it could understand Jacob. Began building things around the dome, simple things, like chairs, small shelves, tools. He used parts of his crashed ship, combining human materials with Alari growth. The dome didn't reject the new pieces. In fact, it seemed to welcome them. One evening, as they sat near the tree, Jacob looked at Elia and asked, "What will the child be like?" Elia placed her hand gently on the growing fruit and sent him a thought, like neither of us, in both of us. Jacob nodded slowly. "Will it be lonely?" Elia shook her head. "Not if you stay." There was no pressure in her words, just hope. Jacob didn't answer right away. But deep inside, he already knew. He had found something on Borealis for that he never had on Earth. Purpose not in war, not in command, not in survival, but in life. A quiet life. A meaningful one. As the stars began to shine overhead, Jacob rested his hand gently on the tree beside Elia, and together they watched the future grow. Jacob stood under the twin moons of Borealis for gazing up at the stars. Elia stood beside him, quiet and calm as always. The growing fruit on the silver tree, their future child now, pulsed with soft golden light. It had grown larger, stronger. It was more than a seed now. It was becoming something real, each day. Jacob learned something new from Elia. She showed him how to care for the dome, how to understand the light-based language of her people, how to listen, not just with his ears, but with his heart. But tonight felt different. There was something in the air, a stillness, a sense of waiting. Elia turned her face toward the sky. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Then she reached out and gently touched Jacob's arm. Something comes, her thought entered his mind. Not of this world. Jacob followed her gaze. At first he saw nothing. Then a faint light blinked near the horizon, small, fast, moving steadily toward them. His breath caught. "That's not a star," he whispered. It was a ship, and not one of hers. He grabbed his old scanning tool from the ruins of his escape. Pod. The signal was weak, but Claret was human-made. It's a small Earth scout ship. Maybe one of the survey teams searching for missing vessels. They had found him. Ace is theirs now. Elia gently touched the glowing tree, the one now holding their unborn child. Then we protect the seed. The ship entered the atmosphere quickly. It wasn't a large craft, probably meant for 2 or 3 people. It circled once above the dome, then landed a short distance away. Dust blew through the glowing forest as the engines cooled. Jacob and Elia stood at the edge of the dome, waiting. A door opened on the side of the ship, and 2 people stepped out, both in standard exploration suits, their helmets shining under the moonlight. Jacob raised his hand. "Don't shoot," he called out. "It's me, Commander Jacob Elric." One of the explorers paused. "Jacob." A voice crackled. "Through the cum. We thought you were dead." The second explorer stepped forward. "We followed your emergency beacon. It activated last week. We thought it was just a ghost signal." Jacob nodded. "It wasn't. I'm alive. But things are different now." He looked back at Elia, who stood quietly beside him, tall and glowing softly in the darkness. The 2 explorers froze. "What is that?" One of them asked. "Her name is Elia," Jacob said. "She's not a threat. She saved me. She's the last of her kind." The explorers looked at each other. "Is she alien?" "Yes," Jacob replied. "And she's more peaceful than most humans I've ever met." There was silence for a few moments. Then the lead explorer stepped forward again. "Commander, Earth Central will want to see this. You're asking us to believe you've been living with an alien species, alone, for months." "I'm not asking," Jacob said calmly. "I'm telling you, this place this dome is all that's left of a beautiful civilization. They didn't fight, they didn't conquer. They lived with their planet. And now she's trying to bring them back." He pointed to the dome. "Inside that tree is something new, a future, part Alari, part human. And I gave my word to protect it." One of the explorers lowered their weapons slightly. "You helped create it?" "Yes." The second explorer looked nervous. "What happens now?" Jacob looked at Elia. She stepped forward slowly and bowed her head, sending a soft pulse of peace toward them. The energy gently touched both explorers. The tension in their bodies faded just a little. "I don't know what Earth Central will decide," Jacob said, "but I know what I've decided. I'm staying." The explorers looked confused. "You're refusing rescue?" Jacob nodded. "This is where I belong now." One of the explorers looked back at the ship. "We'll need to report everything, but maybe Earth needs to hear this story. Maybe they need to know there's more to life than conquest and mining planets." Jacob gave a small smile. "That would be a good start." They left the ship for the night and entered the dome as guests. The light greeted them. The forest whispered. And somewhere inside, the future glowed quietly within the silver tree. The Earth explorers stayed inside the dome for 3 days. During that time, they saw things they had never imagined, trees that glowed with knowledge, living machines that hummed with gentle energy, and a being unlike any they had studied before. Elia did not hide or avoid them. Instead, she welcomed them with calm grace, though she remained cautious. Jacob stayed close by her side. He knew both worlds, now Earth's hunger for discovery, and the quiet wisdom of the Alari, and he also knew what could go wrong when fear entered a conversation. On the second day, the explorers Lieutenant Vega and Dr. Manas to see the growing fruit of the silver tree. Elia agreed, but only after Jacob promised they would not touch it. Inside the heart of the dome, the fruit now glowed a soft amber. It had grown to the size of a small melon and pulsed like a slow heartbeat. The energy around it was warm and alive. "This is amazing," Dr. Min said, her voice full of wonder. It's like a biocradle. Growing life through memory and energy, part of me, Jacob said, and part of her. Vega looked thoughtful. Does it think? Is it aware? Not yet, Elia answered through the mental link, her thoughts clear and gentle. But soon it will dream. That is when we begin to teach. Vega blinked. Teach, ... in the womb? In the cradle, Elia corrected. Alari children learn before they are born. They hear our songs. They feel our thoughts. They know peace first. Dr. Min smiled. That's beautiful. But Vega remained quiet. Later that night, Jacob found Vega standing alone near the edge of the dome, looking out at the stars. You're thinking about Earth, Jacob said softly. Yeah, Vega replied. They won't understand this. Not everyone, at least. Some will be afraid. Some will want to claim this place. Study it. Break it down, I know, Jacob said. But maybe they don't have to. Vega shook his head. You want to protect this world, I respect that. But Earth Command is already sending a science ship. It'll be here in 6 days. Jacob stiffened. They're coming already? We sent a report on day 1. It was protocol. Now they want to see for themselves. Jacob stared into the forest of light. And what happens when they do? That depends, Vega said, on what they see and who speaks for this place. Jacob took a deep breath. Then I'll speak. For it, he went to Elia that night and shared everything about the incoming ship, the danger, and the risk of losing everything they'd built. She listened without fear. Then we must prepare. She said, over the next few days, Jacob and Elia began creating a space where the visiting Earth team could meet the Alari world on peaceful terms. The dome adjusted itself to their wishes, growing new paths. Rasha. Then we show them it's not a weapon, Jacob said. It's a home, a nursery. Elia nodded. Life cannot be claimed, only shared. As the days passed, the child within, the tree continued to grow. Now it hummed with a faint song, a tune Jacob didn't understand, but felt in his chest like a memory. Elia often sat beside the tree and sang back, her voice soft like wind through leaves. Jacob joined her sometimes, humming along, adding little melodies from old Earth lullabies. He didn't know if the child could hear them yet, but he hoped it could. On the 6th day, the sky turned bright. The Earth ship entered orbit, and its shadow crossed the sky like a dark cloud. Bigger than the scout vessel, armed with scanners and security drones, they had arrived. Jacob stood with Elia near the entrance of the dome, watching the shuttle descend. This is it, he whispered. Elia gently reached for his hand. Whatever happens, he said in thought, you are not alone. The shuttle landed softly just beyond the glowing trees. The doors hissed open. A group of humans stepped out, soldiers and leaders, all watching, all curious, some cautious. Jacob took one step forward and raised his voice. My name is Commander Jacob Elric. I represent this world now, not as its owner, but as its guardian. He looked back at Elia, then at the glowing dome behind him, and I invite you not to study it, but to understand it. The forest was silent. The future was waiting. The humans stood in silence. Commander Jacob Elric, once a soldier of Earth, now stood before them not as a survivor, but as a voice for a world older and wiser than any they had seen. Behind him, the glowing dome of the Alari shimmered like a living heart, and beside him stood Elia, tall and calm, her golden eyes watching every movement with care. The lead officer of the Earth ship, Commander Harris, stepped forward. You claim this world speaks through you, Harris said. But what proof do we have that this isn't dangerous? Jacob raised his hand toward the dome. This place has been here for centuries. It never attacked, never spread, never tried to reach out. It only waited. Waited for what? Jacob glanced at Elia, waited for someone to listen. There was a quiet tension in the air. The Earth officers looked around, at the soft lights, the living walls, the silver tree in the distance that pulsed with a slow rhythm. It was all peaceful. Too peaceful, some of them thought. Dr. Min stepped forward then, holding a glowing strand from the Hall of Memory. This is their history, she said gently. A people who never built weapons, never invaded anyone. Their power came from understanding, not control. She placed the strand near a portable earth projector. Light danced into the images of the Alari cities, their songs, their children learning under starlit trees. The humans watched, quiet and still. Jacob turned to Commander Harris. I didn't just survive here. I changed here. Elia showed me a better way to live. And now, something new is growing here. A child, a future. Harris crossed his arms. A child born from a human and an alien. And you expect Earth to accept that? Jacob's voice was firm but calm. I don't expect anything. I hope Earth can learn from this. If not, then at least they'll know peace is possible. There was silence for a moment. Then Elia stepped forward. Though she spoke no Earth words, she sent a gentle thought into the minds of those near her. The feeling was clear. Hope. Trust. Welcome. Even the soldiers, trained to resist, felt the warmth of her presence. Finally, Harris spoke. We'll report this. All of it. Earth Central will decide. Jacob nodded. Then tell them the truth. Tell them what you saw. What you felt. That night, the Earth's crew stayed in the dome. They slept near the gardens, watched the light shapes on the ceiling, and listened to the soft songs of the trees. Some of them began to understand not fully, but enough, and in the heart of the dome, the fruit on the silver tree began to crack open. Jacob and Elia sat beside it, hands joined. Watching the glow grow stronger, soft music filled the air not from instruments, but from the tree itself. A lullaby made of light and sound, then like a flower blooming, fruit opened. Inside was a child small, glowing with soft golden light. Its features were gentle and new, not fully human, not fully Alari, something between, something beautiful. The child floated slightly above the ground, wrapped in a light cocoon. It opened its eyes bright with curiosity and looked at Jacob, then at Elia. It did not cry. Instead, it sent out a thought, soft and pure. I am here. Tears filled Jacob's eyes. Stepped forward, placing his hand gently near the cocoon. The child reached out not with fingers, but with feeling, connection. Elia smiled, her voice like music. Jacob looked around at the dome at Elia, at the child now asleep in a cradle of light. Yes. Harris gave a small nod. All right, I'll send your message. Let's hope they listen. As the Earth ship lifted off, the dome sent up a soft beam of light, a signal, not of warning, but of peace. Sign to the stars that something new had begun. Jacob stood beside Elia, watching the ship fade into the sky. What will you call her? Elia asked gently. Jacob smiled. Leora, it means light. Elia nodded, pleased. Then she will be our light for both our worlds. Together. They turned and walked back into the dome. Not as alien and human, not as survivor and savior, but as family.